Hey everyone, and welcome to my review of Samurai Warriors 5. If this is the first review you've seen on this channel, let me quickly tell you how we do things here. First, I'll give you the facts about the game, what it is, what it's about, and just general info that you need to know. Then we move into the personal opinion section where first we'll talk about the stuff I liked, then move on to the stuff I didn't like. Once that's out of the way, we'll do a conclusion and a recommendation based on various viewpoints. Also, yes, I was lucky enough to get the game 3 days before release, and no, I did not get it for free. This is not a review copy. The place that I ordered it from online just happened to send it out a bit early for some reason, and I think I live quite near where they ship from, so yep, not a review copy, not sponsored, just I guess lucky in this instance. Before we get into the main review, as usual, I just want to take a moment to thank my current subscribers for their support, the kind comments, and for simply watching my content. If you're new here and you find this video helpful or enjoyable, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this one. We currently have a goal set at 500 subs, so if you'd like to help us get there, please subscribe today. So then, what is Samurai Warriors 5 all about? Well, it's the latest game in a long-running series that started back in 2004 on the PS2 and original Xbox. Many of you may be familiar with the Dynasty Warriors series, which itself began on the PS1 in 1997. Samurai Warriors started as a sort of spin-off from Dynasty Warriors, but it's set in feudal Japan instead of ancient China. Over time, though, the Samurai Warriors games have basically become a second mainline series alongside the longer-running Dynasty Warriors games. All Warriors games are hack-and-slash action games where you play as over-the-top versions of real-life people from real history as you fight through the battlefields, cutting down thousands of enemies along the way. The Warriors series has even branched out into games based on properties such as One Piece, Mobile Suit Gundam, Berserk, and many more. Although personally, I'm still holding out for a Dynasty Warriors Power Rangers game, but I really don't think that's going to happen. The game has two main modes, a story mode called Muso mode, and a Citadel mode, which is sort of its own thing, but everything you do in it carries over into the story mode and vice versa. In the story mode, you play through various scenarios and battles following the rise of Nobunaga Oda, who lived from 1534 to 1582 and was one of the most famous figures in the Japanese Sengoku period. It also closely follows Mitsuhide Akechi, who ultimately ended up betraying Nobunaga for reasons that are still unknown to this day. During the battles, you'll periodically be given small objectives to complete, such as escorting a spy to a certain location or defeating specific enemies before they can kill one of your allies, things like that. The objectives don't generally need to be completed, but you get better rewards at the end of the battle if you do them. Combat is very fast, but also very easy to perform. I played this on a PlayStation 5, so I'll be using their buttons for reference, but you have a standard light attack combo on the square button, and you use the triangle button to finish a combo with a heavy attack, or sometimes known as a charge attack. The attack you perform varies based on the number of light attacks you did before ending the combo with triangle. So for example, you can press square 4 times and then triangle, or you can press square just the once and then press triangle for different results. As you level up your character and weapon proficiency, which you gain simply by playing the game, you'll unlock longer combos which at higher levels can have devastating crowd control effects. Mashing triangle on its own without any light attacks beforehand executes what's known as a hyper attack and was clearly put into the game to bridge the combat from one group of enemies to another. This is something that isn't present in the Dynasty Warriors games. I use it a lot in the footage that you're seeing, and it's just where you dash forward very quickly and attack with momentum, which helps you push towards the enemy, rather than finishing a combo and then slowly walking up to the next lot of enemies. It's a move that helps keep the flow of combat going instead of feeling staggered. The cross button is jump, very basic, and circle is your Muso attack, which is kind of like an ultimate move from other games, but I really can't call it that here because you also have something called ultimate skills. These are skills you unlock as you level up that can be equipped and then performed in battle by holding R1 and pressing the appropriate face button. These can range from buffs to your health or defense to hard-hitting combos and can be customized to your preferences. You're also able to lock on to enemy officers with a click of the right thumbstick and call a horse to your side by pressing and holding L2. The only other mode the game has to offer is Citadel mode. This is essentially a side mode that allows you to partake in much smaller battles where you need to defend various gates while completing minor objectives. There's usually a 5-minute time limit on each battle, and you can either end the battle early by taking out their leader or just by surviving the time limit. Everything you do in this mode is worth a different amount of points, which directly affects your grade at the end of the battle. The higher the grade, the better items you'll receive. Doing these missions will also net you building materials which can be used to upgrade the various buildings you use throughout the story mode, such as the dojo, which is where you train your officers, use skill points, and change their equipment, or the blacksmith, where you upgrade your collected weapons and forge gems into them which give various bonuses like attack power or even adding lightning to your attacks. Upgrading these buildings unlocks more features to make use of in the story. You can and will receive building materials from the battles that you partake in the story mode, but Citadel mode is by far the best place to earn them, and it's kind of what it's there for. Besides those two modes and the combat, there really isn't too much else to explain. These games have always been somewhat simple and mostly accessible, at least gameplay wise, so rather than talk about every minute little detail, let's move on to the personal opinions, and first we'll talk about the stuff I liked. So the first thing that I really liked about this game was the change of the visual style. Pretty much all the older Warriors games went for a more realistic and somewhat kind of bland style, with only a few things ever really looking special. Samurai Warriors 5 is a bit of a hard reboot for the series and completely changes its look, its style, its presentation, and virtually every character on the roster, except for the newcomers, of course. I think the change will be really divisive with Warriors fans, but for me and my personal tastes, I really like the new look. It's much more anime inspired and has a sort of calligraphy or maybe watercolor art style, which is present in basically everything from the characters themselves to the animations of the attacks and even the menus. It stands out to me in the same way that a game like Persona 5 does. It just oozes that kind of style and just fully commits to it. I really do like it a lot, and some people won't, but that's okay. Another thing that stood out to me immediately was that the battlefields themselves seem far more detailed and intricate than before. The graphical prowess of these games has never ever been their strong suit, but they have slowly been improving things over the years, and now due to that and the new art style that they've gone with, I think they've arrived at something that works really well. Don't get me wrong, the graphics themselves aren't mind-blowing by any means, but this is, in my view, the best looking Warriors game ever made. It is a PS4 game with no dedicated PS5 version, but it runs perfectly smooth on my PS5 via backwards compatibility, with only a few rare slowdowns. So in that regard, it already beats most of the previous titles in terms of performance. I haven't tried this on a base PS4 or a PS4 Pro, because I just simply don't own one of those anymore, but the missus has been playing it on her Nintendo Switch, and I've also had a quick go as well. It's the exact same game without any missing features, but it runs at 30 FPS instead of 60. From my time with that version, granted it wasn't very long, it doesn't seem to really struggle at 30 FPS except in some really rare instances, but they pass very quickly. So it does seem pretty stable on the Nintendo Switch. This next point might seem a bit weird, maybe, but I really just like the way this game has combined its mechanics and boiled them down to their essence. I've played almost all the Warriors games, even the ones based on things I have no clue about, and I still enjoy them, but sometimes they sort of, I don't really know how to put it, but kind of jump the shark a bit with their mechanics, and you end up in just a sea of words and numbers and menus trying to figure out exactly how you do things, and I've ended up just kind of ignoring them in a few of these games. Again, this is just me. If you enjoy all of the heavy stat stuff in a Warriors game, then that's fine, of course. It's just for me, I like the older school Dynasty Warriors games, but with more modern visuals and solid basic mechanics. It just doesn't need to be overly complex because, well, let's face it, Warriors games are not supposed to be complex titles, but then they sometimes stuff a million different mechanics in that all do a similar thing, and it all just gets a bit much when all you want to do is just fight loads of dudes, I just want to gain XP and levels from simply playing the game, and then have a place to sort out my weapons, sort my skills, sort my items. And that's it really, I don't need any more than that if I'm honest. Luckily for me, Samurai Warriors 5 feels like a strong, solid, easy to pick up and play game, which is exactly what I personally wanted it to be. I also found the Citadel mode quite enjoyable. I like that you can just dip in and out of it and get some materials, some gold or some skill points, and just do little bite-sized battles. I thought it was really clever to integrate everything that you do there into the story mode as well. Feels like it has a purpose, Literally everything carries over. It doesn't matter where a character character gains XP or finds a weapon, it's all universal and all counts everywhere in the game. Also, depending on who you take into battle with you as your partner, you gain friendship, which unlocks special scenes between the two characters. This would have been cool if you could have unlocked perhaps some different outfits or skins for the characters, but you know, it is what it is, it's fine. They didn't really need to add anything here, but they added something and I appreciate it, even if it's not what I'd want. So then, with all that said, let's move on to the negatives, the stuff I didn't like. There isn't really that much to talk about here, as my experience with the game has been pretty positive, but I think balance is important, so here we go. This is definitely going to vary from person to person, but the game only features Japanese voiceover with English subtitles. The Japanese voice actors do an absolutely fine job, but unfortunately I speak very little Japanese and can only understand really a few words here and there. So due to the speed of the game and the combat, it's quite difficult to read all the text at the bottom of the screen and keep fighting at the same time, especially when you bump up the difficulty level. Dynasty Warriors games and Samurai Warriors games both used to feature English voices, and now it seems to be kind of rare that we get them. Are the English voices particularly good? Nope, they're really not, but that's not really my issue. People used to like them before, back in the older games, because they had that bad Western dub chewing the scenery kind of voice, which actually suited it really well. I mean, Dynasty Warriors 9 had English dub, but they must have spent all of their money on it because that game was an absolute abomination to this series. I'm sure statistically there must be some people out there that liked 9, but you know, I'm a lifelong Warriors fan, and it's the only game I've really ever flat out hated in this series. Dynasty 6 wasn't really that great either, but it wasn't flat out awful. Either way, I just like English voices in the game just so I don't have to split my time between reading and playing. That's it really. And this next one is really my only major disappointment with the game overall. The character roster has been reduced in size, and a lot of them have duplicate weapons and virtually the same movesets. So as an example, Ieyasu Tokugawa used to have a sort of spear with a cannon on the end of it, and I understand it's kind of stupid, but it was his unique thing, you know? In this game, he's far younger and has been given dual swords, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But then, Shikanosuke Yamanaka, who's actually a newcomer to the series, uses the exact same dual swords as Ieyasu does. The moveset and combos they do are basically the exact same, except for the ending of their Muso attacks and a couple of others. So realistically, they feel almost identical to use. I don't see why they couldn't have just either given them different weapons, or at the very least, if they're going to have to share the same weapon, give them unique movesets or just something like that. The roster being cut down doesn't help with this issue, because you can't help but think, if you made the roster smaller, why are you duplicating weapons and movesets? I don't know, perhaps there was a good reason for this somewhere, but I just can't see it. Other than that though, from where I'm standing, I'm pretty happy with the game overall, so let's move on to the conclusion and recommendation. Samurai Warriors 5 is a bit of a return to form for me personally. This is simply due to the fact that it ticks all of my boxes and does what I want it to do. I wanted a solid, more focused, basic Warriors game that was about the fighting and not all the menus. The art style being as appealing as it is was just a nice bonus that helped elevate it for me. Of course, depending on how you see things, a more focused and basic experience could be seen as stripped back or having content removed, and honestly, it would be hard to argue with that. As I said, this did it for me, and it did what I wanted it to do, and it did what I wanted from a Warriors game, but I acknowledge its shortcomings. So with all that in mind, would I recommend it? I would, yeah. I think it's a perfectly fine and fun Warriors experience, and brings things back to what makes them fun for me, which is the gameplay. There's not much padding, it just is what it is. If you're someone who has never liked the Warriors games of any kind, this game is very unlikely to change your mind, or convert you into a fan, so it's not really something I'd recommend to you. On the other hand, if you're a huge fan and play a lot or all of the Warriors games, then my recommendation really comes down to what you're looking for from this game. Do you want a more basic, solid Warriors game? Then sure, I would recommend it. But if the lack of modes, less mechanics, and a cut down roster with weapon sharing is a problem for you, then I couldn't really recommend it to you based on that. But if you can look past its shortcomings, I still feel like it's a solid Warriors game. And lastly, if you're someone who's always been interested in these games but has never got round to actually playing one, I would actually recommend this one to you as a good starting point. You don't need to know really anything about the actual history or the other games to understand what's going on, and it won't overwhelm you with menu after menu of just stuff. It's a more basic Warriors, as I keep saying, and therefore probably a decent place to start to get you into the series. If you're still unsure after watching this review, there is a trial version available on every platform, and it's only a few gigs in size, so I would suggest you make use of it and give that a try first. It does work fine on the Nintendo Switch, but if you really care about frame rate and performance, I would suggest playing it on either Xbox, PlayStation, or PC instead. So there you go, that's my review of Samurai Warriors 5. If you'd like to discuss the game or ask me any questions, please feel free to do so in the comments. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, please do consider hitting that little red subscribe button just below the video. If you're looking for retro stuff, check out Pyro Games. There'll be a link to their store in the video description down below, along with a 10% discount code. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.